could you tell us a little bit more about the work you did with the pastors? Because I am really, really curious about that. Like what prompted that, training, and,
Mm-hmm.
what were they seeing with their,
Mm-hmm.
people at their churches and so on,
Congregations.
their congregations?
So I'm a little chatty patty. I can make friends with anybody. And so, I'll find myself, whether at the hair salon or doing my nails, kind of talking about my research. And so I just come across very interesting people all the time. And even through my own pastor in North Carolina, he was finding through those random conversations with people, and also conversations with him, he was finding that there were some people in his congregation or his friends' congregations that were experiencing infertility. And a few ministers had told me, I don't necessarily know how to encourage a couple or encourage a woman who were struggling with infertility. And a lot of it was just like, I offer them prayer, but I don't know what else to do after that. And so years will go on, and so they're offering prayer, they're praying for that child and all that. And I'm a believer myself, so I do believe in the power of prayer, but I also believe in like action and God giving us these tools and resources. But a lot of Christian ministers and pastors were kind of faced with this ethical dilemma of IVF and embryos. And so when they said that, I'm like, oh, that's not even the first line treatment. For some people, yes, if they're missing ovaries or whatever the issue is because of hormones, they might jump to that. But often in medicine, the rule that most practitioners follow is to go from least invasive to most invasive. And so in infertility, that is the same thing as well. So what I did with the pastors, it was actually at a conference. The denomination was Church of God in Christ. So really great Pentecostal crew of pastors and ministers. It was their Kojic Scholars division. So really well-educated pastors and ministers who really just wanted to learn about my research and ways that they could help their congregation.
Right.
So it was such an inviting space. They were just like, what can we do? And so I started from, this is the menstrual cycle. And I realized everybody is coming from different knowledge bases about fertility and menstruation and all that stuff. And so, the first part is just counseling men and women. Are you having sex at the right time of the month? Most people don't realize there's an ovulation window. I think it's been a misconception that like, oh, you could just get pregnant anytime, just have sex, right? But there is a prime time. And so there's that you didn't involve any embryos, you didn't involve IVF at that point. And then next phase is just getting some labs done. And I show them from the menstrual cycle that women and men actually have, different levels of hormones day by day, and that influences fertility. So then if one hormone is off, then maybe just correcting it might actually help with fertility and getting pregnant. And so we kind of just went through the progressions as well. And so I had a great time. I know, some people will say like, whoa, that's a really conservative Pentecostal group. But they were awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were awesome. And so, and I think very receptive. And I think it really propelled me to be there to have that passion to educate others about fertility and fertility awareness, and realize, at the end of the day, it is a personal decision. I always say that in terms of what you feel ethically comfortable with and having those conversations with whoever you serve. But there are, my goal and my passion is to just show people there are different options.
Mm-hmm. So, what advice would you give to friends, family members, mentors, people that are likely to hear about others, whether it's the man, the couple, the woman that's struggling with getting pregnant, right? And they haven't really, like you said, it's not really something that people broadcast. So if someone were to come to me, what are some of the things that I should be highlighting or focusing on?
Yeah, the first is have compassion. Have compassion that somebody just shared something really intimate with you, and just listen to what they need. And asking them, what do you need me? Do you want me to just listen right now? Do you want me to ask somebody or tell somebody or give you my thoughts and opinions and stuff? Because sometimes people just want to talk and vent. And even in my study, there were some women who did share, maybe like 2 or 3 out of the 13, but some of the women, I was the very first person that they ever talked to about this besides their partners and their doctors.
Wow.
And so I felt like I felt a really heavy weight. And one, it was an honor, but one, on the other end, I was just sad that they felt like they were so alone and stuff. And some of them had said, I did try to tell my mom or my friend, and they were just like, oh, you're just not having sex right, or this and that. So like, don't be so quick to put your opinion on what somebody is doing right or wrong, and or give them advice that worked for your friend down the street a couple of years ago. Just first have compassion. Yeah, people will say, oh, I know that happened to this person. What I always say is every body is different. Every physical body is different, so the needs are different. So yes, it might be okay to offer some suggestions here or there in terms of like technique, but I would probably shy away from that and just be a listening ear. And then maybe in some ways gently ask, so have you sought treatment for this? Because, and you could say, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse practitioner or some sort of clinician. The same way that you would probably, refer someone to therapy that might have given you some really huge mental health news, right? You would say, maybe you should consider talking to a therapist about this. Likewise with fertility, maybe you should consider getting evaluated and stuff, and not pushing someone, but just offering that as an option to finally maybe get some clarity, maybe get some peace as to what's going on.
Yeah, because I think, and I like the part where you're saying that there's the less invasive to like fully invasive things that can be done to help them figure out what's going on. And I think that's the piece that most people don't know. Because really, I only knew about IVF, right? Was it in vitro fertilization? And that's the one that you sort of hear about. If there's any discussion about fertility treatments, that's what you hear about. There's also the association of then people have multiple births, right? Multiple babies because of the egg and all of that. So, and that's really stemming from television shows, reality TV, right? And but I really, until like Dr. Jackie earlier, and more conversations with you, I really wasn't aware of all the other things that you could do along the way.
Yeah.
So I think that would be really helpful to just keep at the forefront of mind. So I didn't prepare you for this, but since we're asking questions, are Black women freezing their eggs? Do you know?
I don't want to pull out any statistics that are incorrect. However, I actually did have a few women in my study who, at first I did initially exclude women who went in just for freezing eggs, because again, that's a different reason to come into fertility care.
Right.
The 2 women that I interviewed, the reason that they actually ultimately kind of skipped the egg freezing part and got into treatment is because when they went into egg freezing, they got their hormones tested, and the doctors were just like, oh no, you need to have a baby actually sooner, because like the hormones, whether it was the hormones or the makeup of their uterus or some issues right there, it would have just gotten worse over time. And freezing eggs just first is not like an end all be all. Once you freeze your eggs, it's not like you've protected your fertility, indefinitely, right? Because like I said, there's male factor fertility. What if you marry a partner who has fertility issues? And then also too, IVF, even when done 100% correctly and all that stuff, you can look online. The Society for Assisted Reproductive Technologies will show that, really good success rates are between 30 and 40% for IVF. So yeah, so it's not the end all be all as well. There's a lot of different factors that influences the lining of your uterus and how ready is your body hormonally and stuff to carry this pregnancy. So, but one thing I did notice was that these women were going in to freeze their eggs much later than I would hear some of non-Hispanic white women going in to freeze their eggs. They're doing it in their mid-20s. Whereas I found that a lot of women of color were doing it after 30 and mid-30s, where maybe the quality of the eggs may not be as optimal as it was maybe 10 years prior if they had sought it 10 years prior. But a lot of that has to do with education, right? And understanding a lot of tech companies now. So a lot of people that I know that work for like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they often have the coverage to get the eggs frozen, and there's a storage fee every year, right? So it's not just somebody holding the eggs for free. There's a storage fee associated with that. So there's a lot of different costs as well. But one thing that I've noticed was that there is a difference in terms of like knowledge and knowing whether this was available or if this was even an option to do.
Yes. I would say for me, the idea of freezing your eggs and stuff really wasn't on the radar. No one had ever mentioned in fact, to me or any of my friends, when we were in our 20s. That wasn't a conversation that was initiated, because it's not like we knew to ask. And then, we're coming from cultures in the Caribbean where, from a very young age, you're told, do not get pregnant.
Yes. Yeah.
Unless you're married, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Based on all the different cultural norms, religious beliefs, all of that. And so the idea of pregnancy was really just in the context of marriage, or at least in a committed relationship. And
sure, yeah.
So you're not really asking those types of questions because you're working hard not to get pregnant.
So, exactly.
So why are you thinking about your eggs and the quality of your eggs? And depending on, where you are in your career, if you're an immigrant and things like that, you might be starting later, because I started university at 21, which is when, like the average American undergrad is graduating with their degree. And so, thinking about freezing your eggs is not just the process of going in and freezing, like you said, but the storage fee, right? You need to have the funding to maintain that. And that requires a job. Right? That covers like your regular.
That pays enough. Yeah.
You have to, while you're thinking about your eggs, you still have to eat. You still have to pay rent or whatever. And then if you're single, that's a fee that just is coming from you. So those are, considerations that I'm guessing that people of a certain socioeconomic status across the board, that is a barrier, the money part.
Yeah.
And then, insurance.
Yeah.
The quality of your insurance will also kind of tell what you have available, right? And if you're working for like really for the state or for companies like Microsoft or whatever, the more options, because you're more than likely getting paid better.
Yeah. And it's so true. And there is that conversation of like, it's hard being, immigrant child or even, a Black child, right? Because it's like, don't have babies, go to school, accomplish everything, get your doctorate, now have a bunch of babies and find somebody that you love. It's a lot. It's very stressful. And so in some ways, I definitely encourage women to just for a second, if you can, like block out all the, the noise and the pressure. What would you want? What would you like your life to be like? And maybe what are things that you can do today to help possibly ensure it in the future? And sometimes it does take some research. There are a lot of different fertility clinics offering a lot of different packages because the procedures and the science has gotten so much better. You know, the first IVF baby was in, I believe, 1978, right? And so from there, you've had all these advances and conferences and people just really trying to ensure that the science is great. So the cost, yes, can be expensive, but it has gotten cheaper, or at least better. And so overall, you know, if you're in Connecticut, maybe consider different places in New York, but then, you know, you might move around and stuff. But a lot of it just kind of takes some time and taking some diligence, looking again at your insurance coverage, or I actually had this one participant who said, you know, someone was like, oh, I'm not going to pay that every month. You know, some storage fee, sometimes it's yearly, or, you know, some places will break it down to a monthly fee. And she was just like, well, if I could go back, you know, I'm paying my car every month, I'm paying my house, you know, mortgage every month. So this is something that I want, right? This is something long term would make me happy. You know, I want this type of house or car. So maybe that is an investment that I need to make and just budget properly, you know. But again, there's that single tax, right? We got to do everything on our own. But I just really want to encourage women to just not be discouraged. And there's a lot of great organizations offering scholarships these days. There's Fertility for Colored Girls that often offers scholarships for some fertility treatments. There's the CADE Foundation, CADE, which is based out of Maryland. It is a woman of color who leads it. And she often gives out different scholarships, and all she asks in return often is just service to, like, you know, either volunteer at events or speak at events and advocate so they can keep raising more money for other families or even single women as well. So yeah, I just really encourage people to do their research and then really just make some, you know, considerations and decisions about what they want for their life. And then also a plan B as well, because sometimes, again, things don't work, and maybe fostering might be something that people are interested in, and that's beautiful in itself as well. And so that might bring in the whole piece of shame thing. It's like, well, I should have been able to do it on my own. And so, you know what, baby, in some ways your life just, you know, it just didn't work out that way. It doesn't make you less of a person. So I really just try to also emphasize you are great just as you are as well, and there's no mistakes in life.
Great. Yeah. And so before we wrap up, since I know that I have women that are, you know, that watch these videos from the Caribbean and even some African countries, I wonder, you know, what advice, you know, because obviously we're thinking U.S. centered because that's where we live. But what, yes. You know, women that are overseas that are thinking about
what advice would I give to women? Yeah, we're thinking about it. Well, honestly, yeah, the U.S. healthcare system is not the ideal place. If anything, they probably had an advantage being overseas. And so I actually have a friend who's out in the UK, and so they actually offer a lot of different benefits as well for seeking treatment. And a lot of it is just you have to ask. There are several fertility clinics in the Caribbean. Barbados actually has a really big one. I believe Jamaica is also has like a smaller center as well. And so a lot of it is just researching what's available, and not being afraid to actually access those resources as well. And, you know, prayer is something that is really central in terms of a lot of different, like, you know, cultures from the diaspora as well. And yes, that works for you. Just realize there's also additional resources to kind of make it a more holistic experience. And so, yeah, and it's hard. It's hard. You know, you have the cultural considerations of everybody pressuring you and all that. Thinking about genetic relatedness. You know, what if you could conceive, but you couldn't use your own eggs, or your husband couldn't use his sperm? Like, those are conversations as well to have, no matter the context and no matter the culture that you're coming from. But I think mainly my work and my advice is just to seek out resources and see what's happening. And do your own research as well. There's so many videos, there's so many websites that can just break things down, like any part of your healthcare. Don't walk out of that doctor's appointment or the appointment with the nurse practitioner or the nurse wondering, like, I don't even know what they said to me. Look it up, read, email me or something. If there's something you don't understand, please educate yourselves and realize, you are in control of your health. Yeah.
Right. You made me think about the prayer piece, right? And I think going to the doctor and getting more information can help you to have more specific prayers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because without having that information, you're just praying to God to get a baby.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? But maybe you need to be praying for specific healing, or, for a fibroid to shrink, or, right? So going to the doctor, getting that information could really enhance the specificity and the quality of your prayer, because now you're like saying, it's not just this general help me get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It could, doing the test could also, it might not be you as the woman, it could be the guy. So you're spending all this time praying over your own body, and it's not your body, it's his body.
Exactly.
So knowledge is power. So I think that you're not losing in terms of like your faith and your religious beliefs by going to the doctor. It certainly can be complementary, because they are going to give you the information to really help with your prayer. And then you can, if it's targeted, then you also have a testimony, because you can say, well, I had this fibroid here and this went down, as opposed to, I couldn't have children, now I can.
Exactly. Yes. And I've been in so many services, testimony services, and yes, I do believe in the power of God. Some people might think, oh, well, you're in like this sciencey role. No, I am here because of God. And so I am not afraid to say that, I believe in Jesus, and the power of my prayers and stuff like that has definitely led me to where I am today. Right. And so I love what you said about the specificity, to be able to pray for that procedure, Lord, let it, go through favorably. Pray for that doctor, Lord, that we can communicate better so I can understand what's happening. Pray for this medicine. Yeah, finances, or me the wisdom, Lord, if something doesn't feel right about this medicine that I'm about to take, whatever, let me be able to advocate for myself as well. Give me that courage, that faith, right? So we talk about it in so many other things. We'll pray for that cancer surgery to go well. And so, like, I often try to just tell women that this is no different from another type of disease. And infertility is a disease. We need to see it as such. So we can go to the doctors and get treatment. And unfortunately, it has become very stigmatized in our own communities and other communities as well. But honestly, like, I have so much hope for the future, and I'm really happy that we're having these conversations. And I just hope there's not a generation after this that says, well, I didn't know.
Right.
So I just want people to be informed and empowered and stuff. And just on that note as well, I would have these conversations with women in my study about, like, well, I'm not sure if I'm going against what God tells me. Everybody has their own faith journey, right? Everybody has their own outcome. But one thing I do say is that fertility is not a new issue. there's so many stories in the Bible that we can point to from Sarah and Abraham.
And they were really
Yeah, Elizabeth, Jesus's cousin, right? Yeah. Yes, they were very old, right? And one thing is that, you know, just showing that you are not alone in this, and God does want to give you the desires of your heart. Sometimes it may not look exactly how you want, or the process may be different, right? But overall, I'm a firm believer in that.
Absolutely. Well, wow, we covered the gamut of like seeking treatment to, you know, using medicine and the combination of your faith with medicine to get results. We've done it all.
Yes.
So thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with me and with us.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that each conversation that I have with, you know, strong Black, intelligent women that are helping our communities, that, you know, there'll be one less young Black woman dealing with some of these issues because they didn't know.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
one less woman. So
exactly.
well,
And men will also be empathetic as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for being here, and everyone, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Have a good one.